Fourth Weather Group Ground Safety presents A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, and with minor changes by Captain Hogue. Barley was dead to begin with. There is no doubt whatever about that. The register of his burial was signed by the clergyman, the clerk, the undertaker, and the chief mourner. Scrown signed it. Old Barley was as dead as a 6-year-old battery on a zero morning. Scrowns knew he was dead? Of course he did. They had worked in the same office for several years. They had always ridden to work together. Scrowns was one of the few friends that Barley had. They sometimes drank together after work and talked business, and sometimes they even laughed just a little whenever they happened to be discussing the subject of safety. All that hullabaloo about safety in driving, safety at work, safety at home, never ceased to be the one point that would cause a smile when everything else failed. Often old Barley would say with a chuckle that if he spent all the time working or thinking about safety that he was supposed to, he never could get any work done. Yet as fate would have it, old Barley had died not from natural causes, but from an automobile accident, and he hadn't even been at fault. Nevertheless, Barley was dead. Dead right or dead wrong, it was all the same. He was dead, and there was no doubt whatever about it. Since Barley had gone, Scrooge had even been more serious than before, not even joking about safety, the only thing that he had left to laugh at before. Now he spent his time thinking about and working at his job. Once upon a time, of all the good days of the year, upon a Christmas Eve, old Scrounge sat busy at his desk studying his management control reports. It was a cold, bleak, dark afternoon. A chilling wind coming from the northwest at 18 knots, temperature 23 degrees, and enough high altocumulus to prevent any feeling of radiant heat reaching the earth. "Merry Christmas, sir," said a cheery voice behind Scrounge. It was Bob Hatchett, Scrounge's assistant.
Humbug.
"Christmas humbug, sir? You surely don't mean that."
No, safety humbug. That's what I mean. What's wrong with everybody around here? Read one safety letter, watch one safety film, and safety goes to everybody's head. Safety, safety, safety. Bah, humbug. Now, Cratchit, what's your problem?
Well, sir, I wanted to show you this idea I was working on to make those steps safer.
Hatchet, how many hours have you wasted working on this little gem, huh? If you'd been working on your job like you're supposed to, we wouldn't be forever behind in our work.
But, sir, last winter we had 2 men out for more than 2 weeks because of those steps, and that meant extra work for everybody else to try to keep up.
And I suppose you still want the next 5 days off after your afternoon spent on this little project, huh?
Well, sir, my wife and I always take the children to their grandparents on Christmas Day, and they'd be awfully disappointed if,
And I suppose if you got your car all safety checked and seat belts and all.
Well, no, sir, we don't have seat belts yet, but when I get enough money ahead, ever since my accident that hurt my little daughter Abigail, and then Mr. Barley's accident, well, that was only a year ago, and I haven't forgotten.
A year ago tonight. But that was just one of those things, Hatchet. How many times is some nut going to stop his car in the middle of the highway when his lights go out, huh? Why, you might be hit behind the ear with a meteor within the next 5 minutes, too. You can't fight accidents.
Yes, sir, but I think many can be prevented.
Well, let's not quibble all day on this subject. Get back to work, Hatchet. And I can only spare you from the office for the next 3 days.
3 days? But, sir, that means I'll have to drive all night.
Hatchet, I don't care how long you have to drive. Just be here at 8 o'clock on the 28th ready for a day's work.
Yes, sir. That night, after eating his usual dinner of smoked chicken gizzard and buttermilk, Scrounge sat down with his usual gin and tonic. But this being Christmas Eve, he decided to have another to celebrate, and then, just for a nightcap, one more. Hardly had he finished chewing the last ice cube when he heard a strange jingling sound coming up his stairs, accompanied by a weird light.
What's that? Who let that crazy Santa Claus in here? What's the matter, man? Can't you make enough money out on the street? My gosh, you look like a ghost.
Rubberneezer, don't you recognize me?
Why, you're not Santa Claus. You look like Jacob Barley. Are you Jacob Barley?
I was Jacob Barley.
Well, sit down. Can you sit down? Would you like a drink or something? What do you want? Is this some sort of joke?
Don't you believe me, Rubberneezer?
I don't know. Sometimes the tonic I drink does strange things to me. But if you are Barley, what's that chain or whatever it is that's around your neck and drags on the floor behind you?
It is a chain of safety belts. You see, my life could have been spared if I had worn a seatbelt. Yes, a simple safety belt could have saved my soul.
But Jacob, what do you want of me?
Rubberneezer, I'm trying to save you from my fate. You see, from now through eternity, I must drag these safety belts behind my neck, never stopping, always trying to persuade, through invisible means, non-believers to buy seat belts. This is my specialty. I cannot stop, for if I do, I have the one complete, final fate for all who fail.
But Barley, you were a good man in your life. At least you always worked hard at your job.
True, but hard work for only personal gains counts against you when you leave this world, Rubberneezer. But most of all, my worst crime, that I discouraged safety, and the injuries and deaths that resulted were the same as those I had beat them with my own hands. And now my punishment is like having an albatross around my neck, a chain of seatbelts. But Rubberneezer, you can escape this if you will only change. To do so, you must first be haunted by 3 spirits.
But I don't think that I could stand any more of this.
Without their visits, you cannot hope to avoid the path I tread. The first will visit you tomorrow night at the hour of 1. The second at the same hour on the following night. And the third will come at the last stroke of midnight on the 3rd night. And now, farewell.
And with that, the ghost disappeared through the wall. Old Scrown started to say, "Humbug," but somehow he couldn't even get the word started. So instead, he went directly to his bed and fell asleep instantly, without even removing his socks. When Scrounge awoke, it was so dark that he couldn't even see the life-size fold-out photograph from Playboy that he had tacked on the wall beside his bed. He had just begun to look at his watch when the clock in the church steeple struck 1. In a flash of light, there stood beside Scrounge's bed a childlike spirit, and yet it had the face of an old man. "Rubberneezer, Scrounge, rise up and follow me."
And who might you be?
"I am the spirit of Christmas past. Come, we must hurry through this window.
Wait just a minute, Spirit. I'm a human being. I just can't go walking out of a 3-story window like that.
With me you can. Here, touch my hand. See? Now, this way.
Why, I remember this place, those trees, and that car. Why, it looks just like an old Model T I had. And who's that in it?
Shh. Listen.
But Methylene, why won't you marry me? My gosh, I work harder than any fellow I know. I can beat all the other guys in a race with this car of mine.
That's just exactly what's wrong with you, Scrounge. You think only of yourself, and frankly, you're just not safe. You can't expect to stay alive when you keep racing down the road at 30 miles per hour. It just won't do. That's final. Take me home, please.
Why, that's me, Spirit, listening to my only love. Give me the gate.
Only one example of what you were. But let's move on. And for what seemed like many hours, Scrounge and the Spirit moved through the earlier life of Scrounge, noting example after example of how selfish and how inconsiderate Scrounge had been in his attitude of safety. Finally, he could stand it no longer, and he pleaded with the Spirit to let him return to his room. And when he was back in his bed, he sank into a heavy sleep.
1 o'clock, and it's still dark. My gosh, I must have slept all day.
Ebenezer Scrounge, I'm the spirit of Christmas present. Are you ready to go?
I'm ready, Spirit. Last night I went against my will, and I learned a lesson. Lead on.
Together they passed through the wall, across the city, and finally settled inside Bob Hatchett's house. Mrs. Hatchett was busy preparing Christmas dinner, and the older children were running about playing with their toys. Bob Hatchett was sitting in the living room with his youngest daughter, Abigail, who was sitting close against his side, one little leg held straight by braces. Scrounge and the Spirit listened. Honey, did you have a nice Christmas?
Yes, Daddy.
You seem awfully quiet. What's the matter, Pumpkin?
I'm not a pumpkin, Daddy.
I know. I just call you that for fun. What's the matter, huh?
I was just thinking, someday can I play with other kids?
I don't know, honey. The doctor isn't sure yet.
Tell me again what happened.
Well, you remember that you and Daddy were going along the street about 20 miles an hour, and you were in the back, and when that fellow up ahead stopped so quick, Daddy slammed on his brakes. Only you kept coming right ahead at 20 miles an hour, didn't you? And that's when you got hurt.
Daddy, sometimes I'm glad I got hurt.
You're glad you got hurt, Abigail? Why in the world do you say a thing like that?
'Cause, Daddy, when people see me, they'll remember to be more careful of other children.
Well, honey, that's a wonderful thing to say. Hey, I think Mama just about has dinner already. What are you going to say before we start to eat?
Seatbelts save life, Daddy.
No, no. I mean, grace.
Oh, you mean God bless us, everyone?
Yeah, that's the one. Scrounge and the Spirit continued visiting homes, which should have been full of joy on Christmas Day, but instead were gray and gloomy as the result of accidents of one type or another. Scrounge was in a very gloomy mood when he returned to his room. He turned to ask the Spirit a question, but the Spirit was gone. And at that moment, the bells in the church steeple began to toll. At the last sound, Scrounge lifted his eyes. There, moving slowly, silently toward him, was a draped phantom, appearing like a mist coming along the ground. Its face was hidden behind the shroud which covered its entire body, except for one thin, bluish, outstretched hand.
You're the spirit of Christmas yet to come. Where do we go? Can't you speak to me? All right, I'll follow. Lead on.
As they moved along, they came to the scene of a highway accident. Blinking red lights were seen all around the area, and several men were hurriedly removing a body from a wrecked automobile and placed him in an ambulance. Scrounge overheard two men talking about the incident.
How did it happen?
Blimey, I don't know. 'Twas only this old man. He was driving all along about 30 miles per hour, it seems, and he hit this bridge head on. Probably fell asleep, poor soul. No blinking seat belts, of course.
The spirit moved on, and Scrounge followed. But he was puzzled about the significance of that brief stop. Shortly they arrived in a quiet, snow-covered graveyard. There, just ahead, was a dark figure leaning against his crutches, staring down at a small gravestone protruding through the snow.
Why, that looks like... It is. Bob Hatchett standing there. But why the crutches? And whose stone is he staring at?
At this, the phantom slowly raised his hand for silence. Hi, Pumpkin. It's Christmas again. Did you have a nice Christmas?
Ah, poor man. He's so broken up he can't speak. Here, let me read that stone. 27 December. That would be the night he would have been returning home. Quickly, spirit, let's move on. I feel the ugly part I've played in this man's life. But first, who was that poor soul we saw being removed from the accident on the highway?
Together, they moved on, with Scrounge clinging to the misty black robe. Soon they passed through the walls of a windowless building and stopped in front of a covered body. The spirit raised one hand and pointed toward a small tag attached to the big toe. Scrounge squinted his eyes and read the small writing.
Ebenezer Scrounge. No lap strap. That's my name, spirit. Is this as it will be? Or can I still change these things we've seen in Christmas of the future? O spirit of the future, I've changed in my heart. I'll not forget these lessons. I've learned. Please tell me I can change these future scenes.
Holding up his hands in one last prayer to have his fate reversed, he saw an alteration in the phantom's hood and dress. It shrunk, collapsed, and dwindled down into a bedpost. Yes, and the bedpost was his own. The bed was his own. The room was his own. Best and happiest of all, the time before him was his own to make amends in. Running to the window, he opened it and put his head out. No fog, no mist, no night, clear, bright, stirring golden day.
Hey there. Say, mister, what day is it?
Wow, buddy, you sure must have hung one on last night. It's Christmas Day, but it probably don't matter much to you anyway.
Ah, a merry and safe Christmas to you, sir. And say, could you see if that service station down in the corner is open today?
Wait a minute. Yeah, it's open.
Good. Thank you, sir. I'm going down there and I'm going to buy every seat belt they have for sale. Now, what do you think of that?
Boy, I still think you really hung one on last night, friend. So long. Well, Scrounge almost did buy all the seatbelts they had in that service station. He got seatbelts for himself, and he got seatbelts for every member of Bob Hatchett's family. And he got them installed that very same day. And he forced Bob to take 7 days off so he would have plenty of time to return safely. Old Scrounge was so pleased with himself that he persuaded Hatchet to get together with him and sing a song.
Crashing through the snow in a beat-up Chevrolet, o'er the road he goes, skidding all the way. Turn into the skid, never turn away. Oops, too bad he never learned, and now he's laid away. Safety bells, safety bells, safety all the way. If it had a safety belt, he'd lived another day. Oh, safety bells, safety all the way. If it had a safety belt, he'd be with us today.
Scrounge became one of the leaders of safety in his community. Little Abigail was soon able to play like all the other little children, and she was able to say before many more Christmas dinners,
God bless us, everyone.
And now, from the 4th Weather Group Ground Safety Section, we wish you a safe and a Merry Christmas.